Welcome to DCA Live. I'm here with James from InvestAnswers. How are you doing, buddy?
Very good. Happy Monday.
Mando in the white
guys.
today. How you doing, Mando?
How you doing? I know.
And CTO asking how you doing on that beautiful terrace. I don't know where that is. Is that a fake background or is that where you really are?
You never know. You never know.
How you doing, guys?
We're
going live for now. We're going live for now. We've got a big pump going on. If you remember last week, I said we'd be at 70,000 today. I was off by a couple of days. It looks like we're going up, though. We've got a great show for you. 1 hour, the news of the week. This is all news that has happened this week. Just to take note. James, do you want to run the slideshow?
Yes, sir. So we have the agenda for today. Over to you, Marty.
There we go. So today's agenda, we're going to cover Uptober. Are we going up or not? I think we are. Yesterday we weren't so sure. Today we're pretty sure. US Bitcoin ETFs and market impact. We'll go over that. Some Bitcoin technical analysis. We'll do some other altcoins as well. Global crypto adoption and regulation. We've got some news there. Some new weird things at ETH that James will talk about, and Google. Some blockchain network updates. Corporate crypto strategies. Those are rolling in by the day. Comparing the two leading execution layers, Sol and Sui, just to start getting familiar with those analysis and comparing them. Then we've got FTX creditor repayments, some news there, some new SEC regulatory actions, and macroeconomic factors that Mando can help us out with. So there's our show, 1 hour. We're going to cover all of this, so it's going to be rapid fire. Let's go, guys. 7:45 a.m. here.
Yes, it is. I think we should probably start, maybe, if you agree, Marty, with a little chart as to where we are. Ready, CTO?
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah,
CTO,
so it's fantastic. If you guys listening here, if you only learn one thing, learn support and resistance. Because the reason it works is not some magic lines. It's because people remember price levels. And we have had this level the entire 2024 almost at around 61K or 60,800. Now, a couple of days ago here, or end of September, we were all thinking it was going to run up. It didn't. It came back down. It went up again. It came back down again. Everyone, including myself, was a little bit worried here end of last week. But look here. Again, the support level, the same support level held. So I was waiting patiently here, and it held. You can see it very clearly here. And now we have cleared that resistance very nicely. We're moving up to the top again of this expanding triangle or consolidation pattern that we have been in for the most of 2024. And as you can see, we're very close to a breakout from that. And from there, it's a very, very small distance to all-time high. So I think that once again, we have good chances to finally put this consolidation pattern behind us and resume trending price behavior, which would be fantastic. So it's a very happy Monday, I think, for everyone who's into Bitcoin. It was a little bit worrying again last Friday, but support held and off we go. So that's where we are in the charts.
Fantastic. So we're still playing out that beautiful cup and handle that that flashed months ago, remember? And the cup and handle, I've got a chart of it. We'll look at it later. It's predicting 126,220. So let's see how accurate that is. Okay, let's move on. Jump in. So here you can see, if you all know me by now, you know that I believe in the Wyckoff. It's my third cycle that the Wyckoff has been very accurate. This is a reaccumulation Wyckoff. That means the institutions bought from the bottom of Bitcoin in the bear market. And this is where they're reaccumulating. So they're testing the market and buying more, shaking out retail. And you can see the shakeout pattern very clearly. Every time it dives, people panic sell, the institutions accumulate more. And at some point, you can see they reach the parabola at the LPS, and we're turning up. You can see there those higher lows perfectly. The next structure of the Wyckoff is the turn, which is the SOS. And you can see it's timed almost exactly, I believe, with the US election. So they're going to use that US election tension to create, maximum compression. And that's where we should take off into phase E. And on the left bottom there, you can see I put an overlay of the heat map. That's Binance, the top crypto exchange. This heat map, basically the yellow lines show you where the most liquidity is. In other words, if the price goes there, the exchange will make the most money by liquidating those traders. So the dark yellow lines show you your support and resistance, like CTO was talking about. The most longs are sitting down, way down there. Some would say unachievable at this point. But the most liquidity is sitting at the top there, all the shorts at the top. And you can see that's around $20 billion sitting up there for Binance to go and collect. So that's probably where we're heading next. So all of these converge into one main theme, which is we're probably going to go up now to 66. We got it today, into the supply zone. Now we need to see what happens in the supply zone. You can see that consolidation triangle. That's probably going to happen. And at some point, the supply zone will turn into a catalyst when there will be no supply zone. We call that supply shock. Bitcoin on exchanges will hit a level where the price will have to go up in order to get people to sell Bitcoin so the exchanges can get more Bitcoin. Remember, there's two ways to shake out retail, to shake out a trader. You either got to drop the price and get them to panic sell, or you've got to shoot the price up to get them to sell. Either way, that's what they've got to do. And they've been doing for 240 days, they've been doing reaccumulation strategy to shake out retail. And now they're going to turn the other way and raise the price in a markup in order to get retail to sell. And that's where we are. That's the Wyckoff. You can study Wyckoff, go learn about it. This guy, Richard Wyckoff, invented this way of looking at large smart money accumulation. And it's extremely accurate. And you can follow it along through all the phases. But there you have it. We'll see if it plays out. You can see it predicted the LPS and the move back up. And there we are. Okay. Any questions about the Wyckoff? You can always just DM me at Marty Party Music. I'll always help you out with that. Explain it for you. So there at the top also 21 billion short liquidations at 72,500. That I think is our next destination. Okay. Let's move to the next slide, James. There we go. So let's kick it off with some Bitcoin TA. We just covered the Wyckoff. We had CTO explain to us supply support and resistance. But another massive flashing signal we've got today in TA is the golden cross again. The 25 and 35-day moving averages have crossed in a bullish cross, which always foreshadows the large parabolic move. And it did that in 2017. On the 2017 Golden Cross, Bitcoin experienced unprecedented increase of 2,400%. And then it did also in the previous bull run in 2021. A similar bullish cross led to a price rise of 6x, reinforcing the importance of moving averages. And that just crossed again. It was on Saturday evening, it crossed. And here we go. So you can see a lot of traders use that bullish cross as a buy signal and kick off the markup. So we've got the cup and handle, the bullish golden cross, we've got the Wyckoff, we've got global liquidity. That's already 5 indicators that we're going up. Uptober, to reinstate that October is in fact happening. Let's get some thoughts. Mando, what are your thoughts on this? What's your TA thoughts on Bitcoin? Can you hear me? We can't hear Mando.
Oh, wait, one second.
There we go.
You guys hear me now?
We hear you now.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I haven't been talking as much about it from a TA perspective. I just felt from an event perspective, part of this week has felt to me a bit like a Trump pump. Like as his odds have increased, I just think that if we're heading into the election 1 week, 2 weeks out, and if his odds continue to be 55 to 60%, I think a lot of people will buy Bitcoin for a short-term trade there. Because if he gets in, I think that people will expect there to be a God candle. It could go breach through that all-time high resistance that we've hit so many different times around 71.5, 72K. So that's been my thought. I've been saying it on the show for literally months that, the time to get super long was in September, and then that you would have a little bit of time just before the election I think we'll probably hang out around all-time highs around the election, and then push on from there. That's kind of exactly what that chart showed. It looked like to me as well. So if that ties in quite well with the Wyckoff and some of the other big technical indicators, I think that's going to be the narrative that gets told. At the same time, we go around all-time high. I do think that level at like 71.5K, I think probably CTO can attest to the idea that we've hit that 10, 11, 12 times, something ridiculous. I think we don't get through that level until the election day or the day after the election. But I think that's my play. So I think we're 100% going to be going towards that all-time high level, which I said last week before the election or around the election, and then we break through it after the election.
What are the current Polymarket percentages?
I have it up here. If you share my screen, I have it up here. We can look at it.
That'll be great. Thanks, CTO.
So we have the current numbers of 53.8 versus 45.6. And it's very interesting if you look at the chart down here, that there has been quite big changes the past, the past 8 week only?
Apparently it was another
week or so.
I don't know. Was there another assassination in California yesterday? Apparently they caught somebody outside the Coachella event with a gun or something. And
I heard what you said.
Yeah,
they had another assassination attempt. I don't I think the police chief said it was an assassination attempt. There was no. It was unclear if it was how credible the threat was, but he definitely said it was. But I think this is why crypto started to outperform again. We had a period of time where gold didn't really outperform. Gold was outperforming, crypto did nothing. Gold's actually basically flat/down, and crypto's up about 5%, nearly 10% in the last few days. And that's tied in relatively closely to those odds also increasing. So I think part of it's around that. I do just think that just to simplify it, if you can say what's the asset you want to own on the day if Trump gets elected, I think a lot of people would say Bitcoin is one of those, and people will have a flutter on that into the election. Like whether you want him to get in or not, I do think people will own that as a proxy to a good asset to own into a Trump win. So I do think we'll be hanging out around all-time highs into that election.
Yeah, very interesting. And just to point out in the chart here what Mando just said. So here is the resistance, which it hit a great number of times before, and that's also where the volume profile ends. If you look here at the right, like below that volume, there's been quite a lot of volume changing hands. Sorry, below that price, quite a lot of volume has changed hands, but above that level, there is almost nothing. So that is the resistance to watch, just to show in the chart.
Do you have XAU BTC? Do you have gold BTC? You can just flash up quickly.
Yes.
Look at, there we go.
So exactly like Mando said, it has kind of stalled. But what has not stalled the past couple of days are the stocks, the stocks have, this is S&P 500, and you see here how it cleared this resistance level, retested it once as support, and just killing it, just shooting up here. So of course, one speculative asset doing well usually is good for the other speculative assets. It's not like a competition. It's the other way around. Like if one goes up, that could mean some rebalancing on portfolios, and that can mean good news for something like Bitcoin as well.
Yeah, I think there's been so many people sitting on the sidelines for the last 250 days waiting in money markets and in cash. And I think they're all starting to, go back in. And that's what creates the FOMO and the melt up. Remember, when you have monetary environment like we have right now, specifically in the West, with and China, with money printing looming and quantitative easing, you don't want to be in cash because cash will lose purchasing power. You want to be in assets. So there's going to be a mad rush to assets. And the theory this time around with Bitcoin's new regulatory status, it's a BlackRock status, it's Wall Street status, the allocation into Bitcoin as the risk on asset is going to be, much larger than it was last cycle. And so you can add that to the list. That's another catalyst, I believe, is Bitcoin's status as a inflation buster has never been stronger. So I think we're going to see more allocation of the 7 trillion in money markets. That's probably going to move. We've got
So
the FTX money coming, and I think Bitcoin's going to get more money than ever. Go ahead.
I was going to say, maybe to James, what do you think are the top assets to own into the election? Like, let's say, what are your top 5 for a Trump win? Because I feel like Tesla now has become one of those assets, and I feel Bitcoin would be another one. Are there any others that people talk about? Like, oh, I would own that the day that he gets in. I guess like Trump media stock or stuff like that. Like,
yeah, well, one of the things I tweeted last night, I'm super interested to see how the market and even Bitcoin reacts to Polymarket predictions. There is a correlation. So one of the things that if the market is unsure who's going to win, people will sit on their cash. If there's more probability of a certain person winning, market either goes up or down. I won't talk about which one's which. But there is a super, super interesting angle there. I mean, when you compare something like SpaceX to NASA, it's mind-blowing. It's got triple the employees and it does nothing. I think it raises some flags. That's about it. Well, Elon makes engineering feats that are impossible possible. We had that event last week. So Tesla is definitely a good one. It's deeply oversold right now. But Tesla, like Bitcoin, has these days where it just pops $10, $20 like that. MicroStrategy and all the Bitcoin treasury companies, they have been completely on fire. We have a new one, Sol Strategy, is up 77% today. 77%.
It's up 77 now.
77%. It's
you want to tell people what that is, James? Tell people what that is. I can help if you want.
Yeah. It's basically 2 weeks ago on live Q&A, somebody asked a question. Is this worth a look, or as a flutter, as Mando would say? And I added up the value of their Bitcoin and Solana on their balance sheet and equated exactly to their market cap, which is a pure ARB opportunity if you follow what happened with MicroStrategy since 2020. And since then, it's just been going nuts. So a lot of people don't have access to pure crypto, so their on-ramp is proxies. And I know, Marty, you know the Leah, the CEO?
Leah Wald, yeah, she's one of my favorites. I had her on the space. She's incredible.
Yeah, tell us more about her.
She's just been an up-and-comer for a while, but she moved really fast up in Valkyrie, through the whole Valkyrie Bitcoin ETF. But then when their strategy moved more towards Bitcoin and Ethereum and less into Solana, she's a big Sol fan. She left and started her own business in Canada called Sol Strategies, with the goal of recreating MicroStrategies, but with Solana as a reserve. And that's what she's been doing.
Yeah, this is an old snapshot. Now it's up. Yeah. But what's interesting about that, it was an existing company for a long time. It's been around for 8 or 9 years. Right? Yeah, so I guess you just stepped in and said, let's do something different. Your existing business sucks. Let's follow Michael Saylor. Anyway, it's kind of bonkers what's going on in the markets right now. But back to your question, Mando, what's going to happen? The higher the probabilities go in one direction, the more people will take part of that 7 trillion and deploy it into the markets before it's too late. People know Q4 is always the best for stocks and crypto, and you don't want to not be on the train. So people are definitely deploying. We also saw some very interesting things happening with on-chain data for Bitcoin. Like literally, it's all now long-term holders. All the whales that bought, in the short-term holder cost basis, like less than 155 days, they've all switched to long-term. Retail, from what I see, has not arrived unless they're getting into the ETFs instead of buying spot Bitcoin. So it's a crazy, crazy interesting time.
Yeah, remember when I say reaccumulation, Wyckoff, that plays into that exactly. Remember, people have no money right now, retail. They're pretty much broke. So there's going to be a quantitative easing schedule where new money will get created and the stimulus will come into the retail. People will get more money and cheaper access to money. And at that point, they'll probably start running Bitcoin ads on TV. That's my prediction. And when they start running the ads on TV and the advertising for crypto starts, that's when the reaccumulation turns into distribution. And they'll sell all the crypto to the retailers at a markup. It's pretty much how it works.
And this is also very telling. If you imagine there'll never be more than 15 million Bitcoin, probably 14 million because so much is lost. And I know firsthand how many are lost. I've been tracking it since 2017 because I always found the hardness of Bitcoin fascinating. But the ETFs now have nearly 1 million Bitcoin in just 190, less than 190 trading days. I mean, how high could this go? If it goes to 2 million of a 15 million, 14 million supply, that's 1/7. And most of that's kind of locked away. So we could be at last. We've been waiting for a supply crunch for a long time, but I don't know if it's going to hit in 2025. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'd love to hear. CTO and Mando, what do you guys think of that? Do you guys believe in the supply shock theory?
I do think the supply shock is absolutely real. I don't think like looking at how many Bitcoin is on exchanges is the right metric, because I think a lot of people are very aware after FTX and all the others that went bankrupt that it's a pretty bad idea to leave a large amount of Bitcoin on exchange, because you might wake up one day and they have gone bankrupt and they're saying it wasn't your Bitcoin, you gave it to the exchange, and now we'll see in the future if we give any back to you. So I think a lot of people are wary about that. They move the Bitcoin into the exchange. If they will do a trade, then they withdraw the other asset back out again. But I do think that we can get in a situation where the holders are not interested to sell. And that's the supply crunch. So I think it comes back to try to understand what the buyers and sellers are. Who are they? What are they doing? And why? So I think we can definitely have a supply crunch, but it has to be because the holders don't want to sell. I think that's the...
That's why I think there will be a supply crunch. I think this is something that maybe you only really perceive if you've been trading versus these other TradFi companies that are coming in to buy Bitcoin. So retail traders, although obviously you hold Bitcoin, HODL, whatever, Bitcoin's been around for 10 years. Right, or give or take, maybe like 15 years now, a little bit longer than 10. But the time horizon of some of these buyers, like a pension fund or a city or an insurance fund, the time horizon of their liabilities can be decades. It can be decades. When they come in and they buy and hold, it's not just like HODL Bitcoin. They can hold this stuff forever. They can hold this stuff for absolutely ever. So that's one thing I think people have maybe failed to appreciate of the type of buyer. The BlackRock Bitcoin ETF has not had a single outflow day. It has not had a single outflow day. That tells you that you have buy and hold investors, right? With an exchange, yeah, you'd have money coming in, money coming out. Like sometimes money would leave the ecosystem. BlackRock is onboarding people that are going to own Bitcoin potentially for decades here. So I think there's going to be a supply crunch. It will probably show up year after year, but there's been a real shift in the buyer being retail to now the buyer being institutional capital with a much different liability profile than your average person. Your average person's liability profile is, I need some money to buy a car, a house. Like, I did well on Bitcoin, I'm going to sell it next year. These guys do not do that. They will buy and hold this thing forever, and it will be impossible to get it back. I remember used to have these funds in capital markets where I used to trade, and you would have salespeople calling up these funds, begging for them to sell them back to them because they just couldn't get hold of some of these bonds that they'd have in these investment profiles, and they wouldn't sell. They just don't need to sell. So I think that's the big change.
Absolutely, and we see from the US ETF acceptance, all these other countries and jurisdictions now rushing. We've got Australia, and now South Korea just announced that they will consider spot ETFs in South Korea. It's just a snowball. Exactly, it's a snowball, and when all these sovereign funds and all of these large pension funds and things get involved, I think, like you say, they're long-term holders. It changes the whole status of the asset class, and we're watching in real time. Yep.
In fact,
okay, let's move on.
Next well, actually, while we're on that, Mando mentioned South Korea is a big one, and we know Asia is the big driver of the pump. Last night, I was there at 3 p.m. Pacific. Where's the Bitcoin pump? And it was 5 hours late. So it kicked in around 8 p.m. Pacific, and then it just shot up like $2,000. But what do you guys think of Asia? Mando, you mentioned when Marty mentioned South Korea.
Huge. South Korea, like, outside of crypto circles, in general financial circles, it's a financial hub. Within crypto, I think it's probably one of the top 3 hubs globally. Like,
right.
South Korea is absolutely massive for crypto. It's got one of the highest adoption rates in the world. It has major exchanges out there, huge trading firms out there. It is absolutely massive for crypto. Everyone in South Korea has heard of crypto.
Yep.
It's a far more of an online economy. They recently changed their government. They brought in somebody new. They haven't allowed spot ETFs for a while, but you could see a huge amount of money move into spot Bitcoin and ETH ETFs in South Korea on the back of this.
And
I do think this is a big headline.
I want to share a personal story too. I used to travel a lot to Seoul, and I remember, you'd go to dinner and then you'd walk home to your hotel or whatever, and you see these massive, like a storefront, which have these people who are sitting maybe 50, 70 centimeters apart at a computer terminal. And I walked in one day to see what they were doing. I thought maybe they'd be on social media or something else. They're all day trading, scalping. Like, literally hundreds and hundreds of South Koreans trading 24/7 at terminals in a public place. It's bonkers. Has anybody ever seen that? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, they have. I think there's going to be crypto casinos where there's like, a sports room with big screens with crypto charts and, meme coins and just crazy gambling. I can see that in the future.
Instead of
in
football.
Hong Kong specifically. But yeah, that's very interesting. So we had China also obviously announcing massive stimulus. At the same time, they're giving out 16 new licenses to crypto exchanges. And both South Korea and China are using the same terminology, which is new and I think wonderful. They call it virtual assets, firstly, not crypto. Virtual assets is the crypto in Asia. And they call them virtual asset trading platforms, not crypto exchanges. And that's short VATP. That'll be the new word you'll see. And South Korea used the same terminology, virtual assets. So there we go. We've even got a new word coming out of Asia. So we've got South Korea and China madly licensing crypto exchanges and allowing spot ETFs. Just an absolute snowball happening in Asia.
And then you got 10,000 millionaires this year out of the UK, out of London, out of the traditional finance trading industry, moving to guess where? Dubai. Why is that, Mando? Taxes.
Absolutely. And then this OKX news, which they actually tweeted at me because they were like, yeah, it's a big thing. People misunderstand that OKX got granted a license to trade virtual assets, or license out of Dubai, out of the UAE. And I did extensive research on the weekend that will allow Chinese nationals to trade crypto. That's the thing people have missed out on that little event. That is huge. So not only are they licensing their own platforms, they're now licensing out of the UAE as well. China is literally on the verge of unbanning crypto. And I think that might be a significant event in 2025. So
yeah, it's an interesting one with all these, because OKX, along with the many other major exchanges, they were going to try and get an exchange license in Hong Kong. And then they all pulled out because they realized there was going to be more KYC about their current Chinese user base. So now what they're doing is they're getting licenses in other Asian or Middle Eastern economies and just allowing for offshore players, offshore traders coming in from China. So I think, interestingly, China might unban crypto, but the major exchanges are still not willing to get a license in China because so much of their volume comes from China, but they don't want to force their current users to do KYC.
Yeah, there's an interesting comment right there. I'm going to try pop it up if I can here. From Big J, agree with Marty, retail is broken. Retail is a significant Bitcoin driver. In the old days, retail was a significant Bitcoin driver when it was a tiny asset, like a couple $100 billion. Now that it's $1 trillion asset, retail, I believe, unless they're very, very retail and rich retail investors, they don't have the power anymore, the powder anymore to move the Bitcoin price. It's sovereigns, it's institutions, it's whales. When you look at the amount that retail is actually moving in Bitcoin, it's very small dollars. So I think this time will be different because retail is normally last to the party. That will happen, but it won't have the impact it had in the past to drive it to the moon, because simply, unless of course we get a crazy supply crunch and retail get crazy FOMO and all of a sudden they're flush with cash, then that could happen. But that's my theory. Thoughts?
I mean, my opinion, it's all strategy. So the accumulation happens for the institutions that are going to sell retail the Bitcoin. Then they pump money, they create new money and stimulate, and then push them to buy Bitcoin. And that drives the price of Bitcoin up. So these institutions get incredibly wealthy. So do these ETFs. That's the way it works. They're using Bitcoin like they did gold to, get extremely wealthy. It's called a transfer of wealth.
Yeah. And there's also the psychological aspect. Okay, $70,000 for one Bitcoin versus 0.00002 cents for a bag of 10 million meme coins. Retail will go in a certain direction.
I think Sats. I mean, Saylor's been using Sats, the word Sats. We've missed it, but I think at some point when Bitcoin gets to the $1 million range, we flip to Sats. So you buy a cup of coffee for 100 Sats. So I think retail is probably going to be a SAT world. That's going to be really interesting.
And there's also the boomers leaving all their wealth to the millennials. That will be a big factor, but that's going to be gradual over the next decade to 15 years. That's not going to be big bang next year. So remember that, everybody. Good stuff. Okay, back to your agenda, Marty.
Here we go. Pull it up.
Where do you want to go next?
You got the slide?
I do. Let's just go random through it. SEC, we'll get onto that later. Let's go into, everybody wants to know about SUI and SUI versus Sol. That's a huge topic. Okay. I did a SUI versus Sol video about 3 weeks ago, and now everybody's doing them. Which one is better? My video is pure quant. Everybody else's is just talk. So let's get into it, Marty.
Yeah, I did a little analysis yesterday and pulled up made a little slide, the next slide. But anyway, let's talk about them. Like, what are SUI and Sol? SUI and Sol to me are the prime candidates to create the next internet. And they're both doing very similar strategies in different ways, although the playbook is very similar. Build the network, open source the network, and build an ecosystem. So create an entire economy and lots of other platforms and partners that all start using the chain, and thus grow a larger umbrella which has its own economy. And if you're not on the train, you're off the train. And they're both doing that very well. Solana is 4 to 4.5 years old. SUI is 1 year old. And so obviously the discussion now is, will SUI catch up to Solana? Will Solana, move out, the money in Solana move out to SUI, and so on and so forth. And that's been obviously the hottest debate over the last few weeks. Personally, I don't think it's like it. I think they're both horses in the race that are doing something phenomenal. And I know the people involved, I know the founders, and they get on very well. These are not competitive projects at all. These are very much complementary projects. In fact, I believe that SUI and Sol coming together like this finally poses a real threat to the Ethereum, dynasty. Where just Sol on its own was always a very hard fight, like a dog fight. Now you've got SUI and Sol kind of saying the same thing. So it's a little bit of a stronger force to push against the Ethereum way of thinking being the only way. So then I did this little chart there, and you can see from Artemis the data. I follow this every day. You can go on artemis.xyz. Anybody can go, and you can look at these network comparisons and throughput and user adoption type statistics, and you can see very clearly what's going on. So you can see Solana has 8 times more daily active users at 5.5 million. That means there's 5.5 wallets on Solana that are being used daily. SUI has 715,000. That's an 8x. Then if you look at daily transactions, you can see that Solana has exactly 8x. Coincidentally, right? You would think. That's 41 million transactions a day versus SUI 5 million a day. Then if you keep going at the bottom, look at TVL, total volume locked. That's the amount of value locked in staking contracts or locked in LP pools. You can see it's roughly 5.2x Solana over SUI. And moving on to trading volume on DEXs, decentralized trading, that's swapping, amount of people swapping on the networks, you can see around 5.5x. So very similar. On the top two, you got around 8x, and on the bottom two, around 5x. So that shows you very clearly that, first of all, they're going to be the top two used networks very soon. SUI is coming up behind Base. But on the right-hand side is the interesting part, and you can see the market cap of Sol at 69 billion is 10.9x above SUI. So, let the debate start. How do all of these metrics play out, and how do you trade them? I'm currently 70-30 Sol SUI, and I'm going to stay that way till next year June, I think, roughly. But some people will say, well, Sol's market cap says that SUI should come up to at least, should stay at around 8x, right? Some will say, no, it should be the 5x. And so you can use those metrics in your trading to make your determination. And it's a great conversation starter. But these are the dominant networks, and they're growing at an incredible rate.
Yeah, and they're completely crushing all the legacy chains, absolutely destroying them. And these are the two clear leaders. But one of the things I do look at, Marty, is FDMC, fully diluted market cap. Is very important to get a handle on exactly where things are going. So if you calculate the fully diluted market cap divided by daily transactions, SUI is twice the price. If you calculate fully diluted market cap over daily active users, SUI is 1.76 times the price. And then one other aspect is this DEX volume, as you mentioned, 6x higher, 8x higher. So you got that right. Distance from all-time high is interesting. I always look at this. How much opportunity is there for the winner to recover back to all-time high? So SUI is basically at all-time high, and Solana has a long way to go, 41% to go. So that's also very interesting. I think Gumshoe came out as well this week, and he mentioned, I'm sure Marty, or sure Mando saw it, but he said right now SUI is equally valued to Solana right now, or actually slightly overvalued compared to Solana, which agrees with my numbers. So they're both going to run. The question is which one will run faster, and normally the smaller chains do. But one of the things I did notice as well, the volatility of on-chain activity is extremely volatile for SUI. They went from 1 million users in one day to 500,000 the next day. And it's just up and down like that, which is interesting. CTO, Mando, what do you guys think of these two?
The days of Solana was similar. I mean, back in the day, the first year of Solana was the same thing, extreme volatility, same thing. So it's going through the same sort of life cycle, but obviously the environment is a little different. People are more accepting of crypto, and they're hungry for new crypto. What I like to watch is in the communities of people actually using SUI. I try and get, the vibe. Are people enjoying it? Are there, number of bugs, number of issues, number of stalled transactions? And that's really what I watch. And so far, so good. It looks like it's delivering on its promise. And I always say, as a technology investor,
I can quickly show the chart.
Deliverables are everything. Go ahead, CTO.
So I think the SUI entry is kind of late now. To sum it up, we did talk about it here. And Marty, you really brought this to attention here at the right time. Well, that was down here, that at least I discovered it. Now it's run up in a straight line. So, if you enter here, where would you put your stop loss here? Very difficult, I think. So the entry was here. Now it's run up. Don't know how to enter here. And it's kind of getting a little bit late, while Solana is kind of still interesting because it is acting in this very clearly defined range with a clear support, clear resistance, and the BTC chart as well. So here it's still possible to make entries with a well-defined risk, well-defined downside. But of course, both of them have run really far. The better entries on all of these were way back here. these were the clear entries. But I think a lot of people's problem was that they weren't really paying attention to crypto then, and they kind of come back now and they're not sure what to do. And the short answer is that there is no magic formula. If you miss the entry, it's tough. It's hard to kind of have to look for the next entry and try to avoid buying on the FOMO. But I think
I think it's all about your investments, your time horizon. If you're investing for a short term, it's different. If you're investing for 2 to 3 to 4 years, then I think these are all discounts. Doesn't really matter to me personally. I think these will all be 10x. Sol and Sui will both 10x from here easily.
It could be. It could also be that, in the future, something even better is built. That hasn't even been invented yet. It's hard to predict. I think if going back a couple of years and saying that Ethereum would be this challenged by something else that wasn't even invented yet, I think a lot of people would have said that will never happen. But here we are. And my point is that it could happen again. People are smart, and something even better comes along, perhaps. I mean, it's at least possible.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Go ahead, Mando. Sorry.
Go ahead. For me, I just think we should pat ourselves in the back a little bit here, guys. I think a lot of other podcasts, a lot of commentators in this space were focused on ETH versus Sol versus maybe Bitcoin. We were like, no, the assets to look at right now are Bitcoin, Sol, ETH. Sorry, Bitcoin, Sol, Sui. Yes, there's a fight now between Sol and Sui, but at least we're not sitting here talking about Sol versus ETH or ETH versus BTC. Like I think we did nail that this was going to be the three things to focus on. For me, what I would say, and I said this 30% ago or 20% ago on Sui when it was like 1.8, I started to think it would look overvalued at that stage. I still think it looks slightly overvalued here. Like I think Solana looks cheap on most of the metrics versus Sui and versus ETH. Like to me, Solana looks like a cheap asset. That being said, like I think people are wary of some of the FTX unlocks going into Q1, and I think that's just kind of kept a little bit of a lid on Sol. Like they're aware that could be happening. Whether that's justified or not, I still think that Solana looks the cheaper of the two here, just on a metric basis, and I do think it can push on towards all-time high. But Sui's a lower market cap. You can play around these things. They can get pushed, to a much higher level on an FTV level than you would normally assume. And I think, as you said, like if you're looking at this from a 10-year time horizon, it's good entries for all of them. But what I think part of the Sui trade here is honestly, people just thought they're not going to make their money on Solana at 150. Like bullish Solana thesis there was like, oh, Solana can do like a 2x, or maybe it could pull a 3, and people are like, no. People in crypto to make money. First things first, and like Solana became more of a consensus great trade that you would hold for a while, whereas Sui became a bit more of like the degen trade, which is what Solana used to have. Like you remember when Solana was at 15, like that's what Sui suddenly became, and I think people just rushed for it around that sort of time. So I do think you should be wary on Sui here, but not like you should be wary owning ETH. Do you know what I mean? It's like I do think that trade can still going, but
Solana just threw a $10 wick. Sorry, James. Solana just threw a $10 wick. It went from 155 to 162 and came back down to 157. While you said that, I don't know what you did, Mando. Sorry,
sounds like me.
Yeah, I think what people don't understand with Solana is it's going to be the first chain, generation 3, high frequency chain with potential to do 1 million transactions that actually gets implemented. Like I always say, you can have something in a lab, but actually get it to be implemented by a real company, particularly a publicly traded company, is a massive step. It needs tons of due diligence and testing and rigorous, stress testing. And Solana's been doing that. They've been doing that for almost 1.5 years to get to where they are now, which is, they have one Firedancer validator on mainnet contributing 0.05 stake. And they have Solana 2.0 now, 5 validators, also 0.05% stake. And we know what's going to happen. This is all in preparation for Visa. So I think when Visa comes online and Visa actually is using high-speed execution layer networks, you can't do on any other network other than Sui. pretty much. I think that's going to take it into a new domain where it's no longer seen as a crypto or as a blockchain. It's going to be seen as a financial infrastructure. And markets will start to work on Solana. And that was the ultimate goal, was to run the NASDAQ and the DTCC on Solana. That was Sam Bankman-Fried's original goal. People don't know that.
Does anybody
believe once that happens, Solana will separate? And
okay,
the question is,
technologists
do we run with it? There we go. Go ahead.
Does anybody believe in Metcalfe's law here?
I do.
CTO, Metcalfe's law? You're muted. Yeah, yes. He believes. Sorry, okay. And Mando, Metcalfe's law, you believe in it. So if you look at Sol versus Bitcoin, I know Bitcoin's a store of value. Solana is a blockchain that trades at a tiny fraction of the market cap of Bitcoin. And in full disclosure, of course, I own both. But Solana's 10 million% faster. It does 5,500% more transactions. It has a 1,500% more daily active users, and the fees are becoming almost the same. Now, no matter how you appraise or value a blockchain, you take any of these, you will see that Solana is drastically undervalued versus Bitcoin. But Bitcoin has the scarcity angle, which is the big delta. But in terms of utility and Metcalfe's law, if it's true that the value of a network rises exponentially with the number of users, this thing is cheap. So just want to share that. Any thoughts, anybody?
That's an excellent point, James. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It's cheap.
It's cheap,
but I think...
Go ahead.
But if this goes towards ETH's market cap, I wouldn't like... I think people are they are a little bit wary of what happened to ETH this cycle, right? I think Solana has great tech, and a million TPS is tough to beat. But I think with L1s, people are just aware that when they get to multi-billion-dollar market cap, mostly hundreds of billion-dollar market caps, they kind of have a target on their back as well. Right. And people like to come in and farm something new. So I kind of agree with also what CTO said as well, is that I think part of the reason why Solana looks so cheap is because people are just a little bit wary of going all in and being like, this is the L1 that's going to be there for like the next 3 decades. You know what I mean? Like they've seen what's happened with ETH now and gone like, you know what, maybe there's always going to be a new, maybe someone's going to do what Solana did to ETH next cycle, and maybe they're a bit, I mean, that's why I think Bitcoin dominance just keeps rising as well. Like Bitcoin dominance is 58.5% basically today. It's like, it's crazy.
And Mando, you're dead right, because nothing lasts forever. And first of all, and second of all, 3 years from now, the world will be entirely different. It's changing so fast. Nobody's ready for
the Lindy effect. I mean, do you guys believe in the Lindy effect?
Absolutely.
Metcalfe's rule and the Lindy effect, right? The Lindy effect for the audience means, I'll just break it down in for a 5-year-old. If something comes along and gets adopted, it's extremely hard for something else to compete. User adoption. That's the reason we have the duopoly, which is the whole point of Solana, to break the duopoly. Why is it that Apple and Google control all mobile phones, pretty much? How come a new mobile phone hasn't come along? That's Lindy effect. It is extremely hard to convert me from an iPhone or a Saga or a Google phone to some new phone. It's everyone's tried. And that's what's happening in these execution layer networks.
And actually,
I think that window is closing. Go ahead.
Yes, CTO, can you double into that too? Because what I've noticed is the Lindy effect no longer matters in crypto because the space is changing so fast and crypto users have no loyalty. They want the best user experience, the most security, fastest transaction time, best whatever, cheapest transactions. That's what they look for. CTO, what's your view on Lindy?
This is so interesting. It's such a big topic. But so the Metcalfe law means that if you're kind of interacting with other users, then like kind of value of the whole network becomes the square of the number of people, because the more people that are in that particular network, the more useful it becomes. Like if the 3 of you are on one network, I almost have to be on the same network if I want to interact with the 3 of you. If I'm on another network, that network isn't worth anything. And the more people joining, the more interesting it becomes. Then the question here is if it's possible to make a crypto which is useful for a small number of people. And of course it is a little bit. You could make like an ecosystem where you can trade some DeFi, or you can do something which is useful in smaller users. But of course, it's more interesting the more people use it, because the liquidity is bigger, more people can take part in that ecosystem. So that is very real. And then there is like this effect with the Lindy, that the longer you have used something, the harder it is to get people out of it. But we can see that it is possible in crypto. The loyalty isn't as big as maybe you would imagine. I think it is possible to kind of pull everyone out of Ethereum and into something else. And I think it can happen again. Actually, but it is difficult. I mean, I talked about it many times. Like, we built these telecom systems, right? And we made 2G, and then we made the next one. It took 10 years. It was called 3G, because we were very smart with naming. So it just seemed like an upgrade, even though it was a completely different system. We never managed to make 3G the world's biggest system. It never was. Even though it was radically better in every single way than 2G. So that's exactly the Lindy effect. It took until 4G that we managed to make that one bigger than 2G. So it was like 20 years apart. So there is this kind of stickiness effect, that even if something comes along that is radically better, it's not enough to be like twice as good or 5 times as good. You have to be 10 times better, maybe 100 times better. And in some ways, I think that's exactly what Solana did. It kind of came in and was like 100 times cheaper and faster and so on and so forth. And then it's like enough to bring people over. But I think it's also usability. I think usability is something that a lot of people underestimate in this space. When looking at this L2, we talked about it here, right? We talked about it here, what was it, like 2 years ago or something like it's a big step to start bridging from this L1 to this L2 and so on and so forth. People are lazy. They don't want to do it. I will just take one more anecdote from like telecom. We realized pretty quickly that people are only willing to click something 3 times. Like, if there's more than 3 clicks away on a world scale, no one will use it. It has to be maximum 3 clicks. Even if you have your phone, if you have to click 4 times, no one's going to use it. It has to be 3 times. That's how lazy people are. So if understanding that means that, that's why I felt like something like Base could have a chance, similar like BSC, because you could, in the previous cycle, you could be on the Binance the exchange, you withdraw to BSC, you use it on BSC, and you kind of send it back to the exchange. You don't need to bridge, or you don't need to do anything. So that was the proposition that Base had over the other L2, which is much more complicated. But then comes Solana and says that we don't need to bridge at all. We have everything in one big pool. It's just one layer 1 network. You don't need to bridge. Easier to use. And I think that was been a key part of the success, of course, together with the speed and cost. But there are these kind of very interesting laws of human behavior that I think is very interesting and very useful in crypto, actually.
No, absolutely. I mean, another aspect of this is that, do you guys know about Linux, right? Does everyone here know what Linux is?
Yes.
Linux is the operating system that runs 92% of computers in the world. Okay? It's an open source project. I worked on it. This is the race to be the next Linux. These are open. Remember, blockchains are open source. They're public. Anyone can contribute. So the question is Base the next Linux? Definitely not. It's too tied to Coinbase. Is Optimism the next Linux? No, it's not. It's too dependent on Ethereum. And you go on and you go on, and you understand that there really are only 2 that have the chance to be the next Linux. That is an infrastructure, open source infrastructure layer on top of which people can fork and create their own versions. And that's Solana and Sui. And that's the way I see it now. This is the race to be the next Linux, the next big open source infrastructure project. And that's how I look at it. The other question that came up, guys, I mean, Manda, maybe you've got some thoughts on this Uni chain. Did you see Uniswap announced its own Optimism fork like Base called Uni chain? I think that's quite interesting. I think we're seeing some moves to create these new Optimism. It seems like they're picking Optimism, the OP stack, very good layer 2. But now there's talk on Twitter that, well, what happens when regulatory says that Coinbase can make its own Base token and become an L1? Now, what if Uniswap does the same thing? And what happens if they do that, then everybody else will follow? I think that is an existential risk to the Ethereum network, is that these things might just become their own L1s.
Well,
What
at
do
least
you
they're an
think of
app chains. I think you're seeing this just all over crypto this cycle, right? Like if last cycle was built on ETH, this cycle is, hey, actually, we could just make our own chain and take all the fees ourselves. Like it's just economics at the end of the day. Like L2s get to keep the majority of the fees, and so the vast majority of them are saying, hey, let's create an app chain. We'll keep the fees ourselves, and we'll post the ETH, but we're not going to pay them anywhere near the same amount of fees. And Uniswap probably makes up. It's easily still the biggest DEX, right? Easily still the biggest DEX. Smashes even it still smashes all the Sol competitors. Trust me. Across all the different all the different L2s. You're muted. You're muted, James.
No, absolutely.
You're muted.
That was great stuff. We're
James,
coming on the hour, James.
Not with users.
Sorry to cut you off. Yeah, we're coming on the hour. We can spend a whole show just talking about this stuff, guys.
Yeah,
but basically what I'm saying is they can make a ton of money doing this. I think I saw today that they're estimating they can make $450 million a year by creating their own chain. Right? They dominate all the ETH trading on all the different L2s. There has never really been, even on like Base or any of the other L2s, the bigger ones, Arbitrum. There've been attempts to make other DEXs, and they just never really have come close to ETH. To Uniswap. So Uniswap still has that dominance across all the other L2s. They'll make their own chain. They'll make a bunch of money out of it. It'll be interesting to see if they actually like shut down their services on some of the other L2s they offer it on. But you've seen this. A lot of the perp DEXs have already done this. Like DYDX famously did this as well. I think this is just going to be a trend in ETH, and it's just the economics of like it makes way more money for everyone to create your own L2.
Okay, that's one quick topic here. I don't know who Jane Doe, CFO of Tech Innovations is. Marty, that's yours. But everybody's asking about crypto treasuries, Bitcoin treasuries. There's a hedge fund called Heisenberg. They invested $3 billion in shorting MicroStrategy. And all of a sudden, they're very quiet. They literally got their faces ripped off hard. So shout out to Heisenberg. But Marty, this is your agenda item here. Anything to add?
I think just like we're seeing with the other topics, with the ETF stuff, I think there's this other narrative growing, and that is that Michael Saylor is looking to create MicroStrategy into a Bitcoin bank. So that's a direct, using the word bank is a very big move by somebody like Michael Saylor. We all know the banking cartel, the banking lobby is pretty much behind Choke Point and any pushback because they have the most to lose. And now it looks like, together with Caitlin Long, Saylor is pushing to start to talk about MicroStrategies as a bank where they can loan money and everything based on Bitcoin as a reserve, which I think is obviously the way it needs to go. And but he's definitely come out and said that. And I think this is going to make waves. And you'll see a whole lot of other people, their heads start to spin in TradFi. That, this is the future of banking. Anyway, I thought that was quite interesting. Anybody have thoughts on that?
I'm surprised no one has really done it yet. It's such a big need. Like, where is the interface between real crypto, not the ETF, not the certificate, but actual Bitcoin in the wallet and the bank? Where is that one? And it's not really clear who has that role today, and no one really has it. I'm surprised no one has taken that role. So yeah, I think it's a huge opportunity, and that would be perfect for Saylor to take it.
Yeah.
I mean, I read the banking. I read the banking manifesto. When you want to become, I like Caitlin Long. If you guys don't know Caitlin Long, you should follow her. She's been trying to do this for a long time, and the actual Federal Reserve stopped her from doing this. And that is, the banking license is quite simple. It's a dual mandate. It says protect the people's money, protect the money, make secure money, and give it to them when they want it. That's it. And banking has become this huge umbrella of other services and features, that's not a bank. That's a financial services company. You can replace a bank with a smart contract. Protect my money, give it to me when I ask. So I think we're going to see this narrative that crypto will replace banks. And I think MicroStrategy is doing it the right way. He's coming nice and slowly, as a sort of side thing. I'm reserved in Bitcoin, but I'm a financial services company. And now he's starting to make the narrative clear. He is becoming a bank. And you will see a lot of other companies follow. But expect FUD and pushback from the banks, right? They're not going to give in easily.
Yeah, the Caitlin Long thing is very interesting, and the Custodia Bank story as well, because it's, I think at least there was 4,000 banks in the US, and there's a lot of M&A happening as well. But right now, custody of things like Bitcoin is reserved for the creme de la creme, the top 10 money center or very large banks. What would happen if the 4,000 banks in the US could custody Bitcoin on behalf of customers? That would not just disrupt the dollar a little bit, but also the big banks. But of course, money talks and the big guys get what they want from the SEC, etc. Which there was another very interesting little thing as well that popped up, and then we'll wrap up, I think, real soon. But slide number 20 here, boom. This just in, Matt Gaetz says stock trading should be illegal for members of Congress. Breaking news, everybody. I thought that was kind of funny.
That's the most common sense thing I ever heard.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Nancy Pelosi's almost done anyway, but she's made at least 100 million by my calculations from insider info trading. They hear about what the lawmakers will do in advance, and they play that information. It's super simple, and it should be very much illegal, but you'll never see a poor politician.
Absolutely.
Any wrap-up thoughts, Marty, team, CTO?
I'm not sure that I'm against that politicians have a piece in the markets. I think they should be market participants, but it has to be regulated. They can't buy before they make their own decisions that pump the stocks and so on, which has happened, unfortunately, to a large extent. But I do think that, I want to see politicians participating in the markets, because I think only then you can understand it, or only then you pay attention somehow. But
James,
that's been a lot of funny business going.
Absolutely agree. CTO, I agree with that. I think the only thing we should wrap up with perhaps is everyone's asking about this SEC regulatory stuff. We've all seen that this is heating up. SEC served a Wells notice to Crypto.com last week, and literally the next day, Crypto.com served them with a countersuit, which I believe will land up in the Supreme Court. At the same time, we've got Ripple also challenging. The SEC came back and said they wanted to appeal. Ripple came back and said we want to appeal the appeal, and that's probably going to all end up in a Supreme Court, a big Supreme Court case in the US, where it'll come up straight against, First Amendment rights, like it did with the internet. So I think we're looking at the funnel of the SEC's strategies finally coming to the end. I think it's going to land up in the Supreme Court, and Crypto.com, Coinbase, Ripple are probably going to be leading the show. We'll see. But anyway, that's the hour, guys. Thanks for joining us again today. CTO, Mando, any final thoughts, Mando?
No, this has been a good show. I thought that, look, I've said so many different times, I think we're going to head in and around all-time highs before the election. I think that MicroStrategy thing is something to pay attention to. I know, James, you've been speaking about it quite a lot, but if you think that their carrying value is always going to, or their market cap is always going to be the value of their Bitcoin, what you saw over the last week was the value of MicroStrategy really detached from the value of Bitcoin, right? Like it went up a lot more.
1.82 times, 1.82, 182% premium, over the value of the Bitcoin. It's nuts.
And normally with these sort of things, there's a bit of a short squeeze. But what you're seeing there is that they could actually try and create equity value on top of the Bitcoin. Banks generally have terrible equity values, but they do create some equity with the money that they have in them. But you could see something here where if MicroStrategy is going to try and be a bank, it could trade at the value of its assets plus some form of equity value. So that's where you get to the market cap. So I think that's interesting from Saylor, even though he's probably not given a lot of details around it. Like maybe he's going to do something interesting there. And the only other thing I would say, which I know not many other people do in the show, but meme coins has gone absolutely insane over the last week, like absolutely insane. So I don't know. We don't talk about it that much, but I would say the vast majority of those mid-tier memes that we mentioned last week, this Murad guy that has been showing this public portfolio from Token 2049. That portfolio added $1.5 billion of market cap last week. So huge movement back into memes. Like you just said, like you can't trade on Bitcoin. These retail guys are moving away from that node, and they can't push it around, and they're moving into meme coins. I do think that as a sector, alongside some of the other altcoin sectors and these L1s that I think they're going to be very, very hot. I do think that Bitcoin's going back to all-time highs. I would pay attention to all parts of the market. That's all I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at this point, everyone needs to pick their meme and make an entry, because one of these memes is going to do, 25 to 50x, I think, before it's all said and done. It's just the way it is. And that's always foreshadows the bull run. The first thing people do when they get that stimulus is buy meme coins. It's just the way it is. So yeah. Anything else to close, James? Can you tell us, James, quickly, what's your thoughts on Tesla? I'm a buyer. I'm waiting. Is this the time? This is a
Definitely,
lovely dip,
yeah.
right?
218, 217, 218 was the time today and Friday. I think we go up from here. The way Wall Street works is they take a long time to understand exactly what Tesla is. And it's a really, it's difficult because most of the analysts that run it are auto analysts. So they don't have a clue what AI is or autonomy, etc. Robots. I was at the event. Freaking mind-blowing. I met Tasha Kearney and Kathy Wood, stood beside Elon's brother, Mr. Kimball. It was incredible to ride in the vehicles and interact with the robots and just see the dexterity in their hands. It's crazy. As I mentioned earlier, the world will be very different in 3 years. This is the ride-hail total addressable market where Tesla will be the leader. It's an $11 trillion market. Little vehicles.
Cool.
Running around the planet, bringing people autonomously where they want to go. Massive, okay? And if they take robots, that's 4x that, another 40 trillion. Nobody is prepared for what's coming. So that's my closing thought on Tesla. And I know
we didn't even talk about it, but I think Tesla is just another version of how robotics and automation are going to take jobs. We saw now Boeing laying off 17,000 automation. We saw the dock workers going on strike because of automation. It's just the one after the other. Now we see Tesla basically automating taxis. This is the future, and it's happening fast.
Yeah.
We still haven't heard a politician answer the question, what are people going to do, right? I think that should be the number one debate question coming into the season. What are people going to do when robotics takes their jobs?
So I could stream from my Cybertruck. I think it was yesterday. I drove 1,800 miles on FSD in a couple of days, and like literally, I'm a chauffeur in my own car. I shouldn't say it, but watching stuff on a car just takes me everywhere. It's far safer than I can drive, especially on the streets of Los Angeles, which are just insane. So I'm not confident anymore driving in LA, especially with such a big vehicle, but it's so maneuverable. It is just a special time to be alive. And the only people that don't know, the people that have the products, use the products, have seen been beta testers of FSD over the years, like myself, and see the evolution. As Elon always says, what matters in the world is rate of change. That's how you measure disruption. If you look at crypto, you look at adoption rate of change. Absolutely magical to look at. Same thing with development of FSD, magical to look at. And Jensen Huang was on, I think, a podcast the other day, and Elon Musk set up a data center in 19 days, where he said specifically it takes companies 2 years to plan it and a year to implement it. Elon did it in 19 days. And we saw them catch a rocket yesterday, which weighed 250 tons, if I'm not mistaken. You made CTO, you made a great post on that. Yeah, that is just, he makes the impossible possible. Sometimes a couple of days late, a couple of months late, but it's a special time to be alive. So get into disruption, everybody. AI, crypto, it's special.
Yeah, I think Tesla's going to triple. Absolutely. Guys, thanks for joining us. Another DCA. It's October 14th. We'll see you on the 21st. Predictions for Bitcoin quickly before we go around the table. What are we next week? What are we going to be at? We're at 66 now. CTO, what do you think?
Trend is up. I don't have a predictive process, but support held, which is the big message for me today, which is fantastic. And it's looking great, as we've said here for the past couple of weeks.
Amanda, what do you think? What are the chances of a V-shaped flush?
I think the only flush comes from Israel-Iran flaring up, which probably will happen at some stage over the next couple of weeks. But I do think that at one point over the next 2 weeks, I think we'll hit 70K.
There we go. James, what do you think?
Yeah, I think 70K is in reach. I do have those two lids. One, maybe the theory that Armageddon is priced in, but also the fact that people aren't going to deploy hard until they know where the election is going to go. And that's just a fact of life. I think November 5th, November 6th, we could see a $5,000 candle if the results are proper. So my thoughts.
People are saying
the other way.
before the election, people are front running Trump because they know he's going to win because it's a predicted thing, predetermined election.
I don't take anything for granted in this world. I don't, we'll see.
Anyway, that was the news from 1 week, guys. That was 1 week we just covered. That's how active and dynamic this is that we're living in this time. So buckle up for the next week. We'll be on the 21st. We'll recap the news again, and I'm sure it'll be just as exciting. Thanks for joining us.
And the forecast. Thanks, gang. Have a great Monday.
Bye,
Have
guys.
a great week, everybody.
Bye. Next week.
Love you guys.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Let's go.
Take care.
Thank goodness.
To the moon.
To the moon.